Super excited to roll into this next hour with you all. We've got a wonderful guest speaker who is going to just drop so much knowledge on how she has been able to experience transformation in her personal life. And hopefully you all can write down some tips and tricks so that you can experience that in your lives as well. But before we get started, I would love to go over some quick housekeeping rules so that everyone feels comfortable and confident in this next hour. So I spoke with some of you offline before, but we would love for you to turn your cameras on if you feel called to do so. We believe in visibility. I've muted everyone upon entrance, but feel free to turn your cameras on, come off mute whenever you have something to share. We would love to hear from you, and I'll sound like a broken record by the end of this chat. I want to hear from you all. So write in the chat box, come off of mute whenever you want to share your opinion, a reflection, or if you have your own tips and tricks as well. If you have any sensitive information and you want to be kept anonymous, feel free to find me in the chat box under Mariella Marie, and I will I will flag that to our guest speaker and I will keep you anonymous. And this is being recorded, so if you do hop off of mute, you will be featured in our live recording that you can rewatch later on Power to Fly. So I ask everyone to stay present with us in this next hour. Stop multitasking, bring your full transformative self to this next hour here. We want to hear from you. And the last thing I'll say before we move on is we would love for you to follow us on socials and subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you can keep up with all the great chats we've got in store for you this crazy, beautiful year. Let's just kick it off like that. So speaking of 2021, what a better time to speak about transformation, right? We're starting this new year. I'm going to pass the mic to our guest speaker, Katrina. Katrina, let us know a little bit about yourself, how you came to know about Power to Fly, and what you're excited to share with us today.
So I am super excited to be here. So thank you everyone for tuning in. And I actually heard about Power to Fly through a mutual connection through Shay with Girls Love Travel. She introduced me to Nicole, and Nicole and I had a great chat several months ago on several things, one of which was a chat and learn. I am a multi-passionate entrepreneur. I have transformed and continue to. I'm always a work in progress. Every area of my life the last 7 years, and I believe everything serves a purpose and we can turn pain to purpose. And I am also an online educator. I'm also a wellness advocate. I'm also a global traveler of 27 countries, and recently took a huge leap of faith to leave Atlanta, which was my home for the last 10 years behind. And right now I'm in Costa Rica, and I will be traveling over the next 2 years. So yes, here's some more highlights of mine. And did you want me to dive into them, Mariella, or do you want to?
No, I'd love for you to dive into them.
Okay. So as I mentioned, radical transformation in health, wealth, business, community, and I'm super passionate about creating, transforming, and inspiring a community and a movement. And I always tie in my transformation to 7 different themes: fear to faith, self-hate to love, corporate to calling, lies to love, pain to purpose, bondage to freedom, which you'll hear me throughout the chat mention as I started diving in and digging in deeper. And I'm also an athlete. I've also been a keynote speaker, and as I mentioned, a host, and I am the multi-passionate creator and CEO of Fit Life Creation, which is an all-in-one lifestyle brand. And I got to work with NBC Apprentice back in 2005. No, I did not meet our current president. I always get that question, which is a whole other topic. We're not touching that. So in any event, I've worked with Airbnb, WeWork. I've also worked with over 7 different industries, which I'll tie into as well, and why, Nicole, Mariella, and others thought this chat would be helpful, because I relate on the corporate side, I relate on the side hustle side, and then I relate massively now being a full-on entrepreneur since 2011. So there's a lot of transition and a lot of transformation, and I hope to serve you guys, give you breakthroughs and intentionality as we all go into 2021 and beyond.
Beautiful. Thank you for that introduction, Katrina. And I just want to say, I think we might be, because Katrina and we were like, so in Costa Rica, in Argentina, and we just need to give an offering to the tech gods to make sure our internet is stable right now. It looks like Zoom might be having some problems for us here, but it looks like on YouTube stream, everything is fine. So we're streaming live on YouTube. If you can start videos here on Zoom, then you can go over to faces on the YouTube stream. With that said, have submitted questions. I'm going to take these questions one, and we're going to. So if you see a question come on the screen, feel free to love to hear from you. Come off of you right in that box. It's not your question. Again, we still hear from you. Feel free to. So can you tell us a bit more about your story, what led you to transformation?
Absolutely. So I always point to ultimately three pivotal factors. And this was right when I moved to Atlanta, Georgia. So number one was my faith. Number two, which I know is huge for a lot of women, was choosing purity before marriage that impacted a lot of different things. And number three, actually four things. Number three was also losing over 55 pounds in the course of a year and a half. And a fourth biggest impact was one of my best friends that I was in college with, that we started organizations together. We traveled the world together, Janelle. And I know many of you have friends like this, that are more like sisters than friends. And she got diagnosed with cancer in 2013. And, I'm huge on things pivoting. I'm huge on miracles being a possibility. But I also, looked at what was happening, and she was diagnosed in August of that year. And thankfully I had points, and thank God I went and saw her, and she ended up passing away that December, which was a huge pivotal point. And I know many of us are dealing with things like that now with health, what's going on in the world, unrest, just so many different things. And she always said to me, and I know you guys are going to laugh at this. So clearly I'm white, like there's no, there's a European background, but I'm white. And she, was a Black woman, raised by a Jamaican mother and a Jamaican father. And she would always say to me in college, Katrina, I'm like, you're Oprah and I'm going to be your Gail. And I would just bust out laughing all the time. And when she passed, and I knew her heart and I knew what the intention was. And when she passed away, I really started asking myself these questions of, am I really playing full out? And am I really, pursuing purpose? Am I really creating the life and business I love? And I knew the answer was no, no, no. Like, yes, I had a lot to be proud of. Yes, I had accomplished a lot. But at the same time, I knew that I had missed the mark on a number of different things. And Janelle was a huge pivotal point to transform and to that radical transformation, along with those other three factors.
Love that you're able to tie it into a personal relationship. So that culture, with, of course, who doesn't want to be that rock star couple with Oprah and Winfrey just rocking it all the time? So thank you for sharing your journey there.
Absolutely. And you guys can imagine, I was in quite a fog after she passed away for a number of months. I mean, we all started businesses together, just so many different things. And I know we all have different, stories of pain.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's move on to this next question here. 12 themes transformation.
Side note, Mariella, I don't know if you can hear me. It's cutting out a lot on my end too. And I see a lot of the chats coming in. I'm going to try to pop in and out, and maybe that'll fix it. Okay.
Yes. Thank you. I've been speaking okay on YouTube on our live stream. So again,
it could be Zoom. It could be. Oh, I'm coming over clear. Oh, okay. So, but let me still pop in and out and see if it'll help, because maybe we'll see. At least we can test that out.
Okay, great. And then I know that Nicole's on, so maybe let's, if Nicole can join, if I'm being able to come clearly.
Yeah, because yours is cutting out for me super bad. Like, the only reason I can tell the question is because I'm seeing it on the screen, but let me try.
Okay. Technical difficulties. Sorry about that, everyone. We're at the cells course. This is so.
Okay, let's see if that's better.
Okay. How about now? Can you hear me now?
You're cutting in and out a lot.
Okay. So let me just get some back from Artifice. But if you want to kind of answer the question, Katrina, then that
Yes.
would be great.
Absolutely. So yes, the 12 themes of transformation. So this came to me like step by step as I was walking through my own transformation, and a lot in 2015. So number one is jumpstart transformation. So this is all about basically taking, small and or bold steps, which are relative, and perspective wise to someone, but in your health, wealth, business, or travel. And it helps build that confidence. Two is unleash inspiration. So I'm going to go ahead and say the 12 themes, and then we can probably dive into them a bit more. So, and I'll give you some like key points on them. Unleash inspiration is all about vision and it's all about challenging yourself. Number three is clutter to clarity. So you can see how a lot of it is creation, but then it also addresses things that you need to clear or that you need to face, like facing our fears, facing obstacles, clearing clutter. Number four is time to transform. So a lot of the front end is all about the inner work, about the mindset, spiritual, the inner game. Then it goes into more practical things, smart social. So a lot of people are hyper focusing on social media, which is a great component and a great way to express yourself, to build your business. Like I'm not discounting that, but the more you're aligned to who you are and you freely share, the more it shows up. Number six is moneymaker. Enough said, moneymaker. Number seven, boss brand. So it's all about building that boss brand. And I love your facial expressions. Side note, I keep seeing like a couple of them, so keep them coming. They fuel me for sure. Number seven is boss brand. Eight is web wonder. So it's all about like what web presence you have, how you can maximize your presence, personal brand, business brand. Number nine is scaling smart. So whether you're a personal, entrepreneur, whether you're a business, I see so many people doing things manually, and you can scale with automation. Like over 80% of my business is now automated. That was also a vision way back when. I also delegate a ton. After scaling smart is momentum maker, because it's all about making the momentum and progress and accountability. So I have, tools like the 90-day plan, but I also use a lot of different tools that I can share. And then after momentum maker is, or actually before momentum maker is inspiring influence, which is all about community creation and integration, etc. Then momentum maker, and then crazy confidence. So, which enough said, crazy confidence. And it's a muscle, it's an ongoing effort. So jumpstart, unleash inspiration, clutter to clarity, time to transform, smart social, moneymaker, boss brand, web wonder, scale smart, inspire with influence, momentum maker, and crazy confidence. And all the content I share, like all the blogs, the shows, the courses, like I set up these themes. They came to me from my own transformation, but I realized it also helped it make it easier for me to share and to create. So when you create your own themes and you realize your transformation, it helps make things clearer and clearer for you too. Mariella, did you guys hear me super clear? So maybe,
Okay,
go ahead.
I've just plugged to the internet. Can you hear me okay?
Keep talking.
I just plugged into the Ethernet. Can you hear me okay?
Kind of, you're kind of echoing.
Okay.
I think it's better because I think like there's less cutting out. Like, I don't know, ladies, what do you think?
I do apologize. I'm just getting my camera off for now. I plugged into the Ethernet. It was ironic is we've got a platform. I'm all in Patagonia, so I don't know if it's Argentina having the connection problem right now. But I was able to hear you, Katrina, the full way through. Can we move on to this next question here?
Did you want to go to the next question, Mariella?
Okay, can you see the question here on the screen?
No, now I do. Yes. Just Sarah or Ellen mentioned maybe if you speak a little slower, it may help. Maybe. Just to help like facilitate. So yes, I see it now. Thank you. The key element needed for long lasting transformation. So the number one thing I would say is honestly, you guys, be graceful with yourself and celebrate your progress. Because, and the reason why I say that is one of the biggest components of my own transformation has been patience. Like I didn't, I'm still changing my mind all the time. I didn't lose, weight overnight. Those habits didn't, happen overnight. Then I didn't lose the weight. It took a year and a half. The business building, had, started radically with Fit Life Creation back in 2015. So what you see today is 6 years in. And then the money I made, like, yes, I'm also a CPA, which for those of you in different countries, you may not know, I mean, certified public accountant. I helped make others, 7, 8+ figures year over year. And even though I got to certain points with 6 figures in my own money, I sucked at money management. I had so many issues with worthiness, like so many. And where I am today is nowhere near where I was 7 years ago, but also a lot of those consequences with debt and different things and not being content or not believing I was worthy followed me, so the key thing is to be patient and to focus on progress, because the huge transformations don't happen in an instant. I don't know if we lost Mariella. Did you want to share the next one, Mariella, or did you have a comment?
Hey, Katrina, it's Nicole. Can everyone hear me? Because my internet actually isn't the best either. I'm just gonna go ahead and rename myself. I'm just gonna jump in here to help out with Mariella. You know how my internet is, sometimes mostly our friend, at times the enemy. So give me just a second perfect. Mariella just changed the screen. So diving into this next question. So how do I start the transformation now? I tend to find it hard to start things due to overthinking or feeling overwhelmed.
Absolutely. That's a super great question. So who in here overcomplicates or overthinks? Absolutely been the case. Massive self-sabotage, right? So a couple of years ago, I started really diving into and configuring, right? Hashtag, what I always say is hashtag first world problems, that, it's so super grateful, but then it's never perfect. Because guess what? Humans created it. No, it's totally fine. So 7 steps to success: spiritual, mental, emotional, relational, playful, physical, and financial. And there's a free 90-day guide that I share as well. And so what I started doing and absolutely thank you so much, Nicole. What I started doing, you guys, a couple years ago to simplify and to really focus on progress, back with what I said, is, and we do this anyway, we just don't necessarily think about the alignment. 3 actions every day that are aligned in each of those areas. So for example, my morning routine aligns to a lot of things spiritually, mentally, and emotionally. So already before my morning routine is done, I have over 3 in each of those areas. Then I think of on, financial or physical level. Let's take physical. What are 3 things I can do today that align to who I want to be physically and energetically? What are 3 things I can do today to be financially aligned? So perfect example, I did an earlier presentation with Wonderful, this presentation, and then I'm clearing a whole bunch of content and different things into the mastermind. So, those are 3 key examples as well. So really it's, again, 3x7 approach, focusing on progress, and 2 great tools I use: Focus Matrix. You can download it for free on your phone if you're a super nerd like me and you want reports to look at your progress, because the only person you can really compare into anything with yourself is yourself. So you can look at the progress. And the second tool I use massively for accountability and teamwork is ClickUp. So the 7 areas, you guys, are spiritual, mental, emotional. Clearly there's a lot of overlap: playful, physical, financial, and relational. And you'll identify and see, and here's another thing: even though we take action in every area, typically, every day, or we don't, or we neglect, or we self-sabotage, what I found is when you hyper focus on one area, it impacts everything. So like when I was losing weight, I was hyper focusing on health, but it affected everything. Now I'm hyper focused. The last couple of years, I've been focused on freedom, time freedom, location freedom, expression freedom, which I have now. but I'm not yet financially free. So right now I'm hyper focused on financial freedom, but it's affecting everything. And I would have preferred to be financially free before location free, but guess what? We don't always get what we want.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's true, right? I think most of us wish that we could have financial freedom before a lot of the other freedom. But Katrina, I wanted to ask you, have you also leaned on finding an accountability buddy, or do you have an accountability group outside of what you're doing?
Absolutely. That is a phenomenal question, Nicole. And I think it's very important for people to know. So anytime you work, I always say this to anyone, anytime you work with anyone or anything, like one of your questions should be exactly what Nicole just asked, because that shows you if they're growing or not growing. And I always have, so just to give you an example, and I'll kind of give you guys like several highlights, because I always say I'm community made, I'm creator made, that obviously interacting with groups like Power to Fly and so many others, on various levels. But beyond that, when I first became a full-time entrepreneur, I immediately recognized that value and invested in a year-long mastermind with Strategic Coach. I've also been part of a variety of different communities and programs, from Herbalife Nutrition to Peloton app. I'm also, like, all of last year, I was, just to kind of, there's been a number of things in between, but also to give you another gauge, like last year, all year, the year before, I was part of Boss Babe. Then last year, I was part of the Unstoppable Year with Bethany Hamilton and Tommy Newberry, because I recognized where I needed and wanted more community. And then also I use tools like what I mentioned, like ClickUp. Even though over 80% of our business is automated, I use incredible community and tools with like virtual assistants like Ephesis and Task Virtual, because that other component is delegated. So both from an aspect of being poured into, but then both from a support team aspect too, 100%.
Yeah, it is so important to have those groups. And especially, I think, when you're trying to launch your own things, right? Speaking as an outsider here, of course, but when you're trying to launch your own things, I think going back to that fear and feeling overwhelmed, like it can be really easy to push things off and to not do things. When we say we're going to do it, okay, I'm going to do it on Monday, but then Monday comes and goes, it's okay, I'll do it next Monday. And so, having those things in place and having those groups to really help you focus and to reach those goals, because you also see the other people doing the same, right? And I'm sure that they're struggling themselves with accountability.
Absolutely. And to your point, what happens, just like confidence, accountability is a muscle. The more you practice it, it becomes ingrained. That like now it's, in a lot of ways, I feel like now I work like I used to work when I was, a chief audit exec in corporate America, where yes, the CEO was my boss, but he wasn't hovering over me, but I still got things done. And it's kind of that same, now I say like, oh, the creator is my CEO, but then I still have those groups to where I know, like, okay, every month I have a check-in, or I have these VAs that are prompting me or us for stuff all the time. So there's levels of accountability at different levels.
I don't know about anybody else on the call, but I know I could probably use a lot of squeeze on my accountability muscle, because I'm very bad habit of saying, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, and then it never gets done. So, I've been trying to start the gym for a while now, and I just keep putting it off as I walk by it very frequently. But
I totally relate to that in some areas, but the key is, to your point, Nicole, is to start, because you can think all you want, but if the action doesn't align, we don't ever get the result. And I used to be like some of that in some areas. And then I realized, like, it's literally like start, like as simple as that. Like we overcomplicate or self-sabotage. But then I realized, okay, like don't focus so much on the big end result, like focus on the progress. And also what I used to do, and I don't know if anybody else does this, I used to like create or generate so many different things in so many directions and then overwhelm myself and burn out. Like that's a lot of who I was when I was 55 pounds heavier. So I would create all this, but then it was all this other work that I didn't think about or didn't want to think about or I didn't want to do. But then, so anyway, there's a number of ways, like you can overdo and not accurately, like you can not do. you can overly do. And it's like finding that right flow for you.
And I see Chantel shaking her head, so I think she agrees with you. Just I agree with you. And yes, I just do need to start. I'm almost there. Maybe tomorrow I'll go to the gym, or maybe tomorrow I'll actually sign up for the membership. We'll check in. We'll check in.
Even working from home, because like I've been working out like the past year, like from Peloton. Like I work out on my app on Peloton.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I think I like,
and they have challenges.
That's very true too. And please excuse me if I'm cutting you off. My internet actually isn't good either. It might be an Argentine-wide thing. We both Mariella and I aren't having the best internet. So thank you everyone for your patience during this. Technology is so much fun to deal with. And so Katrina, heading into this next question, so we almost never know everything about someone's life. We're looking at what we admire. So how do you use them as a goal when you don't have a full picture, and how can we avoid comparing ourselves to others?
I loved Nicole seeing this question because I reflect on this so much. So I think, this is very pivotal, very insightful, just great question. So yes, one of the things I always say, and Mariella and I were actually talking about this, is that everyone is fighting a battle you cannot see. So don't think just because, oh, she's walked through all this transformation, oh, she's in Costa Rica. Don't think for a second, like I'm not walking through, like I shared earlier, like there's things with debt, there's things with finances that I'm going through. You can imagine there's a lot of fears and obstacles to walk through coming to Costa Rica and having a stable base, but also realizing I could not mentally or spiritually repeat the same year last year. So, and I'm sharing that transparently, but that's some people will tell you, the stuff.
Okay, hello everyone. I think we have actually completely lost Katrina. I'm so sorry, but really appreciate the patience today because I don't know what is happening. We are like all over the place, and it's funny, Marielle and I are both in Argentina, different places in Argentina, but and Katrina's in Costa Rica, so I don't know if this is a region-wide thing. Let me know where you're calling in from. So sorry about that. Today is just not the day. Sunspots. I don't know anything about sunspots, Sheila, but now I'm gonna have to look it up.
What I'm saying is it could be interference from anything. It could just be a flare on the sun that's interfering with transmissions all over the world. I think we're all used to that though, so don't worry.
Okay. Well, I'll just entertain you here.
Okay, I'm back.
Oh, she's back. Okay, good. I don't
know what happened. Sorry, guys. First world problems again. But I'll jump back in where I was. So, how do you use them as a goal when you don't have the full picture? So I'm going to give you guys a couple of examples of people, that have inspired me along the way. But I realized like we're all no one's perfect. And the thing is to not idolize people, because again, you like sometimes we think like, oh, this person's great, or they have this perfect life, which is, a fallacy. And then a lot of the battles people walk through, like, trust me, you would not want to walk through. Like, that's one thing I've realized too. And so some of my, people that I've admired along the way, Chalene Johnson. Chalene Johnson, like I learned a lot from her, like her Virtual Business Academy years ago, Brendon Burchard. So I admire them and I invest in them, especially when I wanted to, like I had the vision to create an all-in-one lifestyle brand. And I saw that they had created parts of it that was similar to me. So, I admired them. or, people in our, nutritional community that I admire them, but I also listen to them or get to know them and keep wisdom and discernment that, okay, they're not perfect, they're human. And then also don't forget about yourself, because what happens sometimes, we get so focused on someone else and their journey and their influence. And sometimes, like, powerful people or leaders can sometimes knowingly, but sometimes unknowingly kind of try to influence you to become them. And it's like, no, there is only one you, and you need to keep that authenticity and recognize and realize that you have something very unique to offer. Like Marie Forleo is another person that's influenced me, Rachel Hollis, and, in different ways and different things. But, Marie Hollis, Marie Hollis, oh my God, I just combined their names. Marie Forleo says, you have that unique gift. One of the things I say is create, transform, and inspire, because you're born to, because you are. So that's how you can avoid comparing yourself. It's staying humble, but also recognizing that you have a lot of things to give to the world. And the way you say things, who you connect with, how you interact, where you are, how you dress, are specifically designed for a purpose and a people. So like recognizing your value and recognizing your worth without being attached to it like an idol. Once again, like still realizing you're human and there's always more to learn.
So true. And I really was just left thinking about something as you're talking. This is why these types of conversations are so important. This is why visibility and the word that you mentioned, authenticity, is so important, because, we can end up like thinking that these people have perfect lives or have perfect whatever. And then, we try to mold ourselves into that image, like you're saying, and it's just not possible. We all have our own struggles. We all have our own things that we're dealing with. And so I feel you there, and it is just so important to not let that get the best of us, especially in this day and age with social media and influencers and the lives that they live. There's a whole dynamic here, and it's a whole lot of habits here that I don't think we have seen previously.
No, not at all. Because to your point, 10, 20, 30 years ago, you couldn't interact with someone face to face on any media platform, or see their lives or their stories. But keep in mind, people show you, myself included, what they want you to see. They don't show you the tough conversations. They don't show you the nights, crying in their pillow. They might show you pieces of it or share pieces of it, but you're not there for all those moments, or when they're walking through, a crappy marriage or tough divorce or financial, meltdown. And if you look at any type of leader, almost, I would say, when you dive into their stories, over 90% of them have typically had like massive either, transformation, massive financial struggle. Like these are common threads. We're not promised an easy life.
So true. So true. So thank you so much for talking about that, Katrina. I really love that question as well. And so what advice do you have for somebody who feels capable of doing more than what they are doing in their current role or, in their day-to-day life, yet loves the work they get to do, but is feeling confused about their career path and future?
I can totally relate to that. So there's a reason why I walked through 7 industries, because this was me. I was absolutely capable of doing more. I loved the work, but then I felt super confused because I knew internally, deep down inside, I was not aligned, but I did not really know what the path was. And the number one thing I would say, and I'll dive into this a little bit deeper, is, and I know this sounds simple and you've probably heard it, but it's so true. Actually, I'll frame it in a different way. Keep fighting for yourself. Keep fighting for your own freedom. Because me or Nicole or Mariella, any of us, we might be able to give you a piece of guidance or a piece of wisdom to help pivot you. But ultimately, you're the creator of your life and, or the co-creator, however you view that. And you're the one that's going to know deep down inside, like, this is your vision. This is like, and a lot of times I tell people, and this is like, a lot of how it came down for me. I really started digging into who I was as a child. Like, who was I as a child? What did I love? I'm like, I love to create. I love to travel. I love to help guide and teach. I used to have all my teddy bears set out in front of me when I was like 5 years old and teaching them. And they had names, Christina, Teddy. So there's clues in your past. Like I'm working on my book right now, Pain to Purpose, and I always have these reflection activities, like these questions. So, and one of them is centered around that, like go back, like I'll give you guys one story. When I really started to dive into this myself, like feeling confused about my path and what I wanted to do and what that looked like. So I knew, like, as I started digging, I'm like, wait, I love health. I love online and business, and I love travel. And that's literally what my business and everything I do is centered around. And then I love faith. And then I started, there's this one story when I was in Bulgaria, when I was 5 years old. So keep in mind, I didn't know the language yet. I knew Polish and I knew English at the time. And my mom was upstairs unpacking, talking to my grandma. And I looked downstairs from the balcony. And I was like, oh, there's a playground. Nothing stopped me. I was like, oh, there's a playground. I want to play. My mom was like, okay, go. I didn't know the language. I still don't even know how, because I don't remember exactly. But somehow, like my mom came downstairs or she looked out the balcony, like there was like 10 or 15 kids following me into where I said, like, come. And keep in mind, I didn't even know like what to say. And I think I knew like 2 or 3 words at that point. But I was completely in my element of having fun, being a leader, and getting people to go along without knowing the language. And you all have stories like that if you dig into them, they give you pivotal information about like who you are and how you're meant to serve and your unique gifts, talents, and abilities. And when I talk about like how passion plus purpose equals profits, I talk about like, what do you love? Like it's a framework. What do you love? What have you overcome? What are your gifts, talents, and abilities? What do people always say you're really great at? And then where do you want to serve? Like I'm deeply impacted and moved by giving back to cancer, to military vets, to battered women, and to helping in homelessness. And there's key personal things in my life that tie to that. So I would start like with those, and I'll repeat those again. Like, what do you love? What are your gifts? What have you overcome? Because what you've overcome, you can turn to purpose, pain to purpose. What are your gifts, talents, and abilities? And then how do you want to serve? Like, how do you want your money not only to mean, something on the front end, but how do you want it to mean something on the back end? Because let's face it, you guys, the last year, if nothing else, has shown us there's a lot of things in the world that need to change, a lot. And it starts with every single one of us taking responsibility for our part and not letting, different things to pull us and to succumb us into, oh, I want this. Yes, it's great to want. But at the same time, how can you give back and impact humanity in so many ways that are needed? I don't know about you, but I didn't envision a 2020, even apart from the pandemic, but so much more of the social unrest that is not okay. Is not okay, period. And yet we've allowed it, or we've invited it, or we've accepted it.
Yeah, it's so true. And I think a lot of us, and especially in points of privilege, like women, like I've done things in my life where you're talking about accepting it and letting it happen and empowering it, right? Whether or not I believe that, letting things happen that I'm not okay with, but also not saying anything, right? And not stepping in, not playing the part that I need to play from my point of privilege. So I'm really glad that you talked about that, because it's so important, and we can't let that conversation die moving into 2021, right? Like I don't think it's going to, but I think, if it's anything I've learned from Mariella and so many of the conversations that we've had on why, things seem to be really popular for a minute and then they die down. And all of the injustices are happening, especially against people and people of color. We cannot just continue to let those happen and to empower them, whether or not we accept them or not, but by not standing up and not using our privilege to stop them or go against it.
And to your point, Nicole, and I know all of us grew up in different ways, shapes, or forms, and we're shaped, by our, our beliefs, our culture, our environment. And I look back to my childhood of, not only coming from overseas, but growing up in a, elementary and high school that was very diverse. Like white was the minority. we were over 40% Hispanic. It was over 30% African-American and Black. It was, over 20, 30% Asian. And a lot of that shaped. And I remember we would have, different outreaches and things around like Love Sees No Color and wearing t-shirts and being, representing like at school or doing different things. But to your point, it's, it'll be like a lot of center of attention. But the thing I found is staying consistent and plugging in, whether it's into organizations. And I wrote about this, on the blog and my show, and I share things like this a lot, like NAACP. I was involved in NAACP in college. And what's funny is I was one of like 2 Caucasian, women. And a lot of people would point to like one of the founding pictures. And I would just laugh because to me, like I was raised, especially with my mom, like love sees no color. And what happens to anyone happens to everyone because, it can happen to someone's skin color, but then it can happen to me or you because we're a woman. So it's realizing, and I don't know if some of you have visited, Boston has an incredible outdoor Holocaust museum, incredible one. And it makes you so emotional. And there's a lot of this influence and sayings. And so if you ever get a chance to visit, it's really close to the Quincy Market. I recommend you do because, same thing, 6 million plus Jews were, were killed because they were Jews. You have, the injustices, with, minorities and African-American and Black people have gone on for 400 years. Just now, I think Will Smith said it, like now they're being filmed.
Yes. Yes. Thank you so much for that, Katrina. And I definitely want to check out that museum. So impactful seeing horrible things and living those horrible things and seeing how they've impacted, those horrible instances have had a domino effect to create better things in the future. At least that's the hope, right? And that's what we all work towards. So thank you. And so moving on to this next question, could you share some insight about how to get started with transforming one's career direction? And I think you talked a little bit about this, but I don't know if you wanted to add anything else onto here.
Sure. So I'm going to share both some tips and I'm also going to share from my mistakes on what not to do. Okay. So let's see how I want to tackle this. So you heard some of the things earlier. And then, so first, I would definitely suggest, listening to your own, basically your heart, like opening up your heart again, whether it's journaling, whether it's writing things down, like I shared, just a few minutes ago. But then also, and the reason why I said you first, because you're you first, then listen to people that, are at least partially headed in the direction that you want to go. And you resonate with, because you may resonate. Like I listen to a lot of different, demographics, people. Some of the other people I listen to also are like Eric Thomas. I love him. I love Jim Rohn. Like you can see they're completely different from some of the resources I mentioned earlier. Because, so many people will pour into you at different points in times. And then, yeah, ET is great. ET is awesome. Like he's super like, will push you, but also in a loving kind of way. So the other thing I really want you to think about is your timing. So I left corporate America in 2011. And I thought, which again, everything's perfect. Your journey is your journey. So I say this with a caveat or with a disclaimer, like it's really like, sometimes it's harder to forgive ourselves than anyone else. And also it's sometimes easier to judge ourselves more than others, but I've come to realize like everything happens for you exactly the way it's supposed to. And it's in perfect timing and it's happening for you. And I know that's a really, really hard pill to follow sometimes, but that we always have the choice, like, will you get bitter or will you get better? And ask like, what is this teaching me? So that's my disclaimer. And then like I left corporate in 2011 and I had prayed about it and I got 3 specific signs to leave. And I thought like I ended up becoming an adjunct professor at Georgia State. I ended up getting 2 consulting projects. And then a couple of months later, which was beyond the 3rd sign, I became a national speaker with the American Institute of CPAs, which you can see all that's totally different than who I am now, but that was part of the journey. Well, I thought, which I still believe it was exactly when I was supposed to leave, that, it's going to be easy. I'm going to have money. Everything's going to be flowing, la, la, la. But being someone that used to put so much focus on position, on titles, on status, what started to happen is basically like one of the projects fell through. Then things weren't super stable. And then that started to teach me and reveal to me how much I basically held money as a god. And then, so I, you know, those are some of the things that may come up, like what we talked about, like worthiness, insecurity, like where we put our focus. But it also taught me a lot of humility. And then it also made me realize, like Ashley Renee, before she left corporate, she shared how she saved so much money and how she put things away. And I'm like, oh my God, of course, coulda, woulda, shoulda. I can't go backwards. But I'm sharing kind of both of those extremes where I took the leaps of faith when I did. I've, you know, kept on, I kept persisting and persevering. And, you know, and resilience is a really good muscle. But at the same time, you can make things easier by really, like I have one of the things I talk about is the 6-pack of wealth. And just to give you guys a quick glimpse, and it's also on the blog and the show, it's creating, giving, saving, spending, leverage, and investing. And you can see how I've kind of touched on those through different points, and I'll drop those in the chat. I really had a big wake-up call, you guys, in like 2010 and 11, again, being fully transparent, where there is this prevalent feeling or feelings and lies of I'm not enough and I'm too much all at the same time. And that showed up over and over and over in like how I showed up, how I communicated, and with my money. And so many, you know, conflicting thoughts and misalignments. And I realized where I was overspending in so many areas, and like the materialism, the consumption. And I had a huge wake-up call of getting really, really clear on spending, which obviously the pandemic has also helped in some ways, a lot of people to get really clear. But, you know, the more you get clear and become like a really good money manager and then save, but then at the same time, sometimes money or savings can be a crutch to where you don't take as much action or as many leaps of faith as you basically are being pushed to, like you're letting that hold you back, versus when you have a lot of pain, you keep taking leaps of faith because it's forcing you. So I shared kind of those different dynamics because the journey that's for you is perfect. But if you find that flow and that balance between pushing yourself, but also being sensible at some points and stable, because what happens sometimes if you don't, and I know many of you have had this, like I've ended up causing pain to people I never ever wanted. Like I was, you know, as far as income and different things, I was pretty self-sufficient by the age of 16, and I was giving money to my parents and buying them trips by like 18, 19 years old. But then through some of the consequences and overspending and taking these leaps without thinking, or maybe without fully evaluating, I caused them pain in the process by needing to ask for their help or increasing my debt during different points. So again, your journey is perfect however it is, but I totally relate. And again, it's figuring out that flow of not letting yourself shrink, but not letting yourself get too comfortable because you have the money, which is really, really hard, especially if you're trying to transform your career direction, but it's constantly challenging yourself and questioning yourself, because ultimately when you hold yourself back, you're stopping someone from being served. Or if you're not fully on fire, like with your health, like I shared, you know, the weight loss, or I haven't drank alcohol for over 6 years because I realized like that's not in alignment with who I want to become. And that is actually hurting me way more than the fun, or, you know, just so many things and things that we put in our bodies that aren't helping us.
It's so true, everything you're saying, Katrina. And also, you know, this whole materialistic and consumerism, I think that is the United States. You know, I've learned a lot since moving abroad and moving to Argentina, where, you know, people don't have as much or seemingly as much disposable income as in the United States, right? And of course, I'm generalizing here, but it really forces people to get creative, or, you know, buying new things is way more expensive than fixing what you already have if it's broken, where I've come to learn from living abroad and going back home, that back home it's a lot cheaper to just buy something new. Like if your TV breaks, it ends up being just as much almost sometimes to find a technician to fix it versus just buying a brand new TV, especially because there's so many deals. And so, moving abroad to Argentina has really taught me to like move towards a more minimalist life. And I've just noticed how that has impacted the rest of what I do. I was in this habit of like, I have a lot of money, so I would spend more money, but I could feel like I had some economic power at least. And now, trying to reduce the amount of consumption across the board it's given me a little bit more financial freedom. And it's just amazing how in turn I've wanted to buy less. I have more and I have more economic power to buy more things, but I just don't want to, because I realized it was kind of filling this empty space for me, and I'm sure that this is a really common theme throughout the US. And I say that from personal experiences, from family, from friends that I've seen myself.
No, absolutely. No, I love how you said that. And I definitely, I remember when we first connected, I so admired your transition into Argentina. And I can imagine moving, there versus, for now I'm going global for the next couple of years. But to your point, you realize the contentment, you realize the disattachment, you realize okay, I don't really need this. I want this. And then I love that you pointed to the gaping hole. Because when we focus on so much of the external, when I started my transformation, I really started to realize wait a minute, Katrina, you gave away your power to all these external things. And what did it get you? It got you all this emptiness, and you were actually way more full back in college. And even though, the past 7 years, I've had some of my, deepest, downest, darkest holes, or, what they call the dark night of the soul, there's been times where I felt more full than ever before, yet not having anywhere near the external things. And I realized that that's really the true place of freedom, because then when you have everything added for you, then you're truly living, an abundant life from every direction. So I love that you talked about that, Nicole. Yeah. And I'm sure Mariella can too, because she talked about some of her transitions as well.
Oh yeah. Living an abundant life. That is my goal. But yeah, definitely got a lot of internal stuff to work on in the meantime. So this conversation is really fitting for me right now. I'm sure it's fitting for a lot of people. But as you said, Katrina, you got to start somewhere, right? You just have to really start. So that's the beginning of it all. So actually, what a very good question to move into next. So I know that I need some information in my life. I probably wrote this myself, but I'm not exactly where. How can I pinpoint what am I happy with in my life right now? Okay, on purpose, people.
No, I love this. And I love the interaction on the chat, you guys. It's awesome. Keep it up. I know, we've got however much time we still have left. I've loved all the time, but definitely feel free to drop any other comments or questions in the chat. So no, this is a great question too. And this can feel like you're in a bit of a minefield or in a maze. But one of the things I learned is, sometimes you're going to start with what you feel is drawing your soul the most. So, I shared in the beginning, the key pivotal points. So for me at the time, kind of, feeding off Nicole's comments and the question, I started realizing, that basically I was double dutching with my faith. I wasn't fully in, I wasn't all in. And I realized I had placed so much importance on the external. So a big part of it was, me recognizing, okay, the next real component for me is really feeding, my soul with my faith. With increasing, things in, Bible studies, really learning what it meant to even have a relationship with the Creator, what that means to me in a free way. But then it also tied to massively into my wellness. I knew I wasn't happy with my wellness. So that's some ways it evolved. But so sometimes you'll be led into something specific is basically what I'm trying to say, is how to pinpoint it, right? But sometimes, which this has been kind of the last 2 years for me, you're going to feel this weight on you. Okay. Last year was where I started to feel weighted about, letting go of Atlanta for now, taking the leaps of faith to travel, to have that next level, different elements of freedom. But over the last several years, it's also been this way of, fully being that example to create a life and business I love, but also get the financial house in order and also keep going no matter what the outcome is. And there's been a lot of I think TD Jakes said this once, that sometimes your inner pain can feel a lot worse in that emotional pain than, any physical pain, like even worse than like breaking a leg. And I'm sure like many of us can attest to that. So I use that as an example because for some of you, the pinpointing is going to be the area that's giving you the most pain. It may be relationship. So coming back to kind of the 7 steps, right? So ultimately, I always say like health, wealth, business, and travel, but health can have to do with that, relationship. Like some of you, may really have a deep pain and a desire to, rectify a relationship or to take, your marriage to the next level, or your significant other, or a relationship with a child. Some of you, it may be the health. Some of you, it may be the money. And, the thing is, I know that we deal with all these things, at any given point, but it's really identifying the one you want to focus on more than others. And then you're still taking action in the other areas, but it may not be as much right now, or you may have days that you block to that. So, for this, I would, so that's kind of 2 different ways, right? But I would really, really suggest that you do a combination of 4 things. Journal, and really like journal freely. Don't have a script, just journal. Just like let it flow, like what's on your heart, what's on your mind. Then think about like what is coming up for you. Like what's your focal points there? What's your biggest pain points? And then the other thing is, you guys too, you want to think about your vision, because I can tell you so much of what has pulled me is the vision for my life. Like that, like a lot of times will pull you beyond anything and everything. And then thinking about after the pain points, thinking about, okay, like, where can I start to see progress, and where can I start to see taking action? And on a daily basis, I talk about the 7 steps to success, which I'll drop those in the chat: spiritual, mental, emotional, relational, playful, physical, and financial. And taking a minimum of 3 actions every day in each of those 7 areas. I call them my 3x7 approach. But then obviously when you're hyper focusing on one area will typically have more action. Like right now, my community and my financial have a lot more focus. So I'll drop those in the chat as well. And that's a great question.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Katrina. And I know we're coming up just about on time here. So I wanted to, let you send us off here with the last piece of advice, maybe. I just really quickly wanted to respond to what you said about focusing on that first thing that really seems to be like the blocker, the pain point for you. And I think one of the things you mentioned before was how those working on that one thing can really like leak over into the rest of the areas that you're trying to focus on, right? So if it is health and wellness, right? And let's stay with me, going to the gym. I know once I start going to the gym, my anxiety is going to be better. My stress levels are going to be better. I'm going to have more energy. And so anyways, going back to, it's all just part of the process, and I just have to start. And I'm sure other people are with me, especially with all these New Year resolutions. But I wanted to just hand it back over to you, Katrina, so you can send us off here with your, last piece of advice, food for thought. That's the word I'm thinking of. And then, how we can keep up with you and how we can support you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much to you, to Paloma, to Mariella, just for Power to Fly, for having me. And also I was going to add to what you were just saying, Nicole, is, figure out what's best for you. Because I know you're juggling, a lot of different things too, as far as your timing. If you decide to go to the gym, but, maybe the solution is at home. Maybe the solution is outdoors, so my workouts dramatically changed last year, like millions of other people, because I just didn't feel okay with going to the gym, in Atlanta, Georgia, even though I love to lift and I bought hand weights. So, don't think, I think sometimes we think our journey needs to look a certain way, but it's like figuring out what actually works best. And, and I've loved the challenges and the Peloton app, and I would have never thought I would love that. So it's giving ourselves that freedom to choose. But, so A couple of things. So last thoughts that I would say is, one, knowing that your story and your journey matters, shifting your mindset from pain to purpose, and remembering to create, transform, and inspire, because you are born to. Like, you are here for a purpose. Your life matters. If no one else has told you that, you are loved. And, there are people that are waiting just for you to show up in so many different ways. And if you don't keep fighting for that freedom, then, there are others that won't be inspired by you. And, that's the closing thoughts as far as my ultimate thoughts and the message and the parting message I want to leave you with. And how you can connect with me is fitlifecreation.com. And I'll drop that in the chat. And I also shared some links with Nicole and the team. And then, as far as like some added value for you guys. And you can also find me on all channels as Katrina Julia Fit, or Fit Life Creation, etc. And those are all on the website as well.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Katrina. Thank you to everyone for bearing with us with these technological issues. You know that we value you and your participation in being here more than I think we can vocalize, especially, when we're all so distant socially. So it's really nice to come together virtually. So thank you to everyone for being here today. Thank you, Katrina. And I hope that you all have an awesome rest of your day. And I hope that, there's no sunspots or anything that are affecting your technology either. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone.